morning, everyone, and welcome to our today's live talk. I hope you all enjoyed the song in the waiting room. You've got a friend in me, and that's basically our topic for today. We want to talk about friendships and how to find and maintain friendships. And my name is Nina Brinkmann. I'm account manager at INSITE. And INSITE you probably know as your provider of the Employee Assistance Program. We have been in the field of corporate health for 25 years now, actually 26 this year. And we would like to discuss with you about the topic of friendship today. Generally speaking, it's more an exchange rather than a scientific discussion. And you are welcome to include your thoughts and questions. But first of all, let me introduce my two wonderful colleagues that have joined this call with me today. I would start off with Thomas, who will take care of the technical part today. Thomas, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you very much for the short introduction. My name is Thomas Weißenfels. I'm an account manager at the company INSITE, and I'm happy to be here today to have a look into the chat. So you all have the possibility to join us today, not just to listen, but also to participate. And therefore, you will find on your screen, if you search on the right side below our pictures, you will find a Q&A or a question and answer section. And important is, if you type something there and if you press on send, or if you click on send, your message will be gone on your side. So you will not see it anymore. But don't worry, it's like a letter that you send. It will be received by me, and I will have a look into the chat, what comes in from your side, what kind of questions you have, or what kind of information you want to share. And if it fits into today's live talk, I will try to include all your questions that you have, or as many as possible within the hour. So that's my part today, and I will turn off my camera now and come back if you participate and to bring in your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. And I brought our today's expert with me as well. Her name is Dorothea Kenny, and she is an expert of the topic mental health, and she will be my interview partner today, which I'm very grateful for. Dorothea, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much, Nina, for having me here. I'm really excited to be here today. So as you said, my name is Dorothea Kenny. I'm a health management professional and a mental health coach, and I've been working in this field for the last 15 years. So I spent the entire day supporting people in finding their personal balance in increasingly challenging times. And the topic we're going to be talking about today, friendship, is in fact a core element of mental health and well-being. So I'm happy that we have this hour today together to talk about what friendships are all about, why they're important, and of course, what we can do if we feel like there's maybe we could do with one or two more closer friends in our lives. That's going to be covered today as well. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dorothea. And I mentioned before, just before we start off, we are not holding a scientific lecture. It's more an exchange of experiences and views on the topic of friendship. It can certainly not replace an individual counseling. So if you feel that there is something you would like to discuss in more detail for your own situation, please feel invited to use the Employee Assistance Program for individual counseling. And that's also a little hint regarding the chat. If we cannot cover all the questions, because it might be too short time or it might be too individual, it's also our invitation for you to get in touch with our Employee Assistance Program. Okay, Dorothea, now that we have this wonderful topic today,
Yes.
we already exchanged some ideas and some experiences before we started the call. And I think we all agreed that this is a really, really nice and important and meaningful topic that we are discussing today. And maybe we can start off with a little, I'm missing the word. So let me phrase my question. What would you say distinguishes friendship from other social relationships?
Well, the first point of social contact we have as human beings is our family. We're born into a family that we didn't choose. So it's kind of something we're born into without having any say in it. And that is one of the biggest differentiations to friendships, that friendships is usually something I voluntarily choose. I can't choose a family, but I can choose my friends. I can choose to spend time with people who are in line with my view on the world, in line with my interests, in line with my personality. And that, when you look at other social relationships, like with colleagues or in school or at university, they're usually people that we're thrown in with due to a particular context that we're in, like university, like school, like your job. So again, I have no choice regarding the colleagues that I have. And with some of them, I get on really well and maybe even develop friendships. And with the other ones, I just work alongside and we'd never go for a coffee together. So friends is usually, they're the people I voluntarily choose to spend my life with because they make a difference to my life. They enrich my life. They kind of complete me as a person. And I suppose that's the biggest difference and what makes it so special and so fulfilling when we have that. But at the same time, there's obviously also potential for at the same time for hurt and disappointment. The closer we are to people, the more likely it is that there may be occurrences that we're not so happy with. So two sides to every coin.
Yeah. Absolutely. And what would you say makes friendship so important for us?
We know from research that friendships or social connections, not just friendships, but generally people that we have close social interaction with, they are a core element of being human, of health and well-being. It's basically one of the basic psychological principles. It doesn't matter where you live in this world, it doesn't matter if you're male or female, we all share the same psychological basic needs, and connection and belonging is one of them. This is basically rooted in evolution because thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, we simply could not have survived on our own. So we needed the community to survive. And that biological setup is still in us today. So in order to have a fulfilled life, it is important to have social connections. And the good news is it doesn't have to be a huge circle of friends, not at all. As long as we have one person in our lives, one person we feel close to, that we know from research can be perfectly sufficient to have one close social connection in our lives.
And for me, it's even a little bit like when you look at coping mechanisms, for example, for a lot of different problems that you might face in your life, whether that be mental health issues or problems in your daily life. There are two things in my perception that are always mentioned. One is move your body and activate your social network.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe that everyone listening here today, and we were talking about this, Nina, before we went live in the session today, that we've both had this experience, and I'm sure that everybody else here has had the same experience. Sometimes in life, we are hit with situations that are difficult, that are tragic, that are life-changing, that are really difficult to cope with. I heard this brilliant term the other day, reality slaps. An author of a book called them reality slaps, whether it's losing someone, whether it's getting getting a sickness yourself. Reality slaps are a normal part of life. They happen to everyone. And when one of those reality slaps hits us and it feels like we're stumbling and it feels like, you know, we can't cope on our own, it is so important to have the social network to support us, to stabilize us, to give us a sense of emotional and social connection and protection, and also practical help. See, the friendships can have so many different components. Social contact can have an emotional aspect. You know, there's just a person I can talk to about anything. I can be myself with that person. I can even say stupid stuff and they're not going to condemn me or laugh at me. That kind of emotional social support is incredibly valuable. But sometimes we need practical help. That's also part of friends. So having a circle of friends to support us, but not just to support us, but also have fun with, to enjoy good times together. That is what creates this special effect that friends have on our lives.
Yes, and I also think that it's really valuable to have someone to do a little reality check with when you're not sure about how you look at a problem, a situation, when you're just a little bit uncertain, then it can be really helpful to just ask a very good friend. And sometimes what I also think is really interesting, when you don't really know how you feel about something and the person that is a close friend knows you inside out, the person can actually help you find out how you feel about certain things.
Exactly. It can be like a mirror. Sometimes if we're so stuck in on a topic, you know, sometimes we can't see the forest anymore due to all the trees that are there. And it can be helpful to have another person from a more objective viewpoint. And especially if they know us well, they can help us gain insights that we're not able to have ourselves at that moment. So that's also an important fact that you just mentioned.
Yeah. Thomas, there is a question for us.
Yeah, there was a question regarding the minimum of one person, or maybe on your opinion, Dorothea. So, what kind of persons does that have to include? Can it also be your spouse or a family member, or does it have to be another voluntary person or another person?
Well, there's no has to be. I think that's really important. What's most important is, do I feel that there is one person, whether it's your spouse or whether it's a friend, but is there one person that you can call at 3 a.m. in the morning and feel kind of welcome and safe with that person? Is there one person like that? It doesn't matter what official role they have, as long as there is somebody like that where you feel no matter what, I can call them and I know that they love me and they care about me and they always have an open ear for me. That's the important criteria, let's say.
Thank you very much.
Dorothea, would you say that male and female friendships are different?
If we, well, I think they are. And we also know that from research that there's differences in male and female friendships. Okay, let's open two big drawers, right? Of course, there's differences, and of course there's exceptions. But for simplicity's sake, let's open two big drawers: female friendships and male friendships. Female friendships tend to have a stronger focus on having a bestie, one good friend, or maybe two good friends that are really best friends. Female friendships also tend to be more emotionally close, like with female friends or female friendships can have quite a deep dive emotional aspects. You literally share, you turn your inside out and you talk about everything. There's a big element of supporting each other, having each other's backs with female friendships. And because they can be, it's important to emphasize they can be. It's not doesn't mean they have to be or they always are. But they can have a depth and a fulfillment that can be incredibly profound and rich, but at the same time, that also carries the potential of more tension and conflict. Because the more I open myself up emotionally, the bigger possibly the risk of being disappointed or being hurt. So there's two sides to the coin. When we look at male friendships, but the listeners, please do correct me if your experience is different. Male friendships are usually not as emotionally deep, but the focus is more on, I meet my mates and we do something together and we have fun together. You know, we go and meet, I don't know, play soccer, or we go to the movies, or we go and drink a beer. It's more about having companionship, and it's not so important that my best friend is there. So if Tim is not available, Tom will do, right? There's no big deal. I'll just call another buddy of mine if Tim is not available. So it's a different, maybe a different depth to it, but it doesn't mean one is worse than the other. It just, we have different needs. And especially with women, I think we can, again, big drawer, but a lot of women, I think, can identify with the idea that as much as we love our partner and our husband, sometimes when we want to be emotionally engulfed, maybe sometimes the partner is not the ideal person. That's when I call my best female friend, when I feel I need some emotional stroking, let's say. And that's also important to bear in mind, that not, if I do have one good friend, I think it's important to bear in mind that even that person is so dear to me and is so fulfilling in many ways, to not expect absolutely everything of that one person. I think that's also important to bear in mind, to keep my own expectations in check.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think that you don't need one person to tick all your boxes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that can put a lot of pressure, not just in the relationships, by the way. Same goes for the partner. Don't expect your partner to be X, Y, Z and all this, and you know, all roles to be fulfilled perfectly. That's usually a recipe for conflict. And the same applies to friendships. Having different friends for different interests, for different needs, may be worthwhile taking a look at. Who do I like spending time with, and within which context? You know, maybe some friends are literally just for going out. Other friends are great for having deep, meaningful, emotional discussions. And yet other friends are maybe helpful when you need some, I don't know, some advice on how to renovate a house, just to give it a couple of examples.
Yeah. And what I also notice with myself, Dorothea, maybe you can tell me if that's something that you also hear in your daily counselings. I do act differently with different friends. I do have is it a different mask that I'm wearing?
So I wouldn't call it a mask. A mask to me sounds a little
negative.
Yeah. I wouldn't call it a mask, but it does. There is an element to that we have different, you know, Nina is, you're one person, but there's different aspects to your personality. And depending on who you spend time with, certain aspects of your personality will maybe be more apparent, more dominating. For example, if somebody is in a professional role, a friend of mine, he's a police officer, right? So when he's in his professional role, he's like this big, tough, tall police guy who would really make you think twice if you want to commit a crime. But at home with his kids and his wife, he can be this warm, heartful, emotional person. That's not a mask he's wearing. That's just a different context that he's in. So yeah, there are differences depending on the people. Which part of my personality do they bring out more? And this is where it gets interesting, because maybe you've experienced that yourself, that you spend time with some people and it feels like they bring out the best version of you, a version you like. And then there's people, they trigger something in you where you can be snappy or irritating or sarcastic, and you're surprised, I don't want to be like that. Why does this person trigger me like that? So it's always a two-way road, and it's got nothing to do with putting on a mask, but it has to do with different elements of my personality coming through more profoundly.
Okay. Thomas, is there a question in the chat?
And I have the feeling that it is partly related. I want to bring this question in that just arrived. The question was, why is it more difficult to find true friends when you're older than in former times as a young person? And I have a feeling it could be relatively relevant.
Yeah, this is a very good question. Thank you for that. Again, something I think most of us have experience with, especially if you've moved, let's say, for a job, right? Classic example, I don't know, you're in your 40s and you move city, maybe you've moved country because of your job, and you're in this new place that you live, you have your work colleagues, and you try and meet new friends, and you think, oh, yeah, I don't even know where to start. I don't want to go to a bar and sit there on my own and look like a loser. How do I find friends when I get older? Why is it more difficult? It's more difficult because, again, we know from research that it takes a couple of circumstantial aspects play a role, that if they are in place, if those circumstances are in place, it's easier to find friends and it's easier to maintain friends. So, for example, physical proximity is one of those circumstantial factors. If I bump into people, whether it's in work or in my neighborhood, it's just more likely that I talk to them and I have a chance to find out if they're friendship material. And when we're younger, we are thrown into a particular context in school, at university, in your sports club, whatever. And there's just naturally more opportunity due to that physical proximity of the people. There's more opportunity to meet new people. And as we get older, right, we're more set in our ways. We have our job and we've lived in the same place for 20 years and we have a particular circle of friends. We go to the same places and the same restaurants and we don't try new things. So naturally, we reduce the chance, the likelihood of meeting new people. So if I'm older and I find it difficult to find new friends, one of the first things I would look at is, okay, where can I break my routine? Where can I do something different? Which place can I go to that I've never been to? Which activity, which sports can I try out that I've never tried? Just to open up the window of opportunity to meet new people that haven't crossed my path in my current routine.
Yeah, that's a very good tip. Maybe, look at sports clubs and things like that. Vereine, that would be the term in German. What's the name in English?
Let's call it an interest group. You know, whether you like hiking, for example. When I moved to Frankfurt, I moved to Frankfurt for my job, and I didn't know anybody there. I remember my first Saturday, my first weekend in Frankfurt. I'm like, I have nobody to call. There's nobody here. I have nobody's number in Frankfurt that I can call and ask if you want to go out. And that was totally weird. I had my work colleagues, but at the weekend, I felt utterly alone. And at the time, I started joining a thing called, I think it's called Meetup. It's like an online platform. You can put in your area of interest. So I put in hiking and stumbled across a group in Frankfurt. People who are interested in hiking, and they take the train Sunday morning, they go out into the countryside, and then they hike together. And on the very first hiking event that I went to, there were 40 people. I didn't know anybody. And there was this woman on her own, just like me. And I just went up to her and said, you know, really stupidly, is that your first time here too? Nothing clever, nothing witty, just a really stupid, is that your first time too? And it worked. We didn't stop talking for 4 hours and exchanged numbers. And she's been a really great friend since. And she introduced me into her circle of friends. And that's I think when we're older, it becomes even more important to understand nobody's going to ring at my doorbell and ask me, do you want to come out and play? I have to take the first step, go out there and try something new, leave my comfort zone, talk to people, even if I'm afraid that they may laugh at me or may reject me.
I think that's a very valuable point in, like, leave your comfort zone, even if it feels a little bit strange, it will pay off. I have a really nice little story from my aunt. She was in her late 60s when she lost her husband due to cancer, and they had a very close, typically village-like lifestyle. So they spent a lot of time at home within their family. So obviously, when he wasn't there anymore, she was really alone. And I was so proud of her because she just simply picked up the phone and she called women from the village where she knew they were either widows or divorced. And she made a lot of, she didn't meet new people. She knew all those women for a lot of years already because they lived in one village, but they just weren't friends before. And now they made friendships out of it. And that's something I really think is I was really proud of her.
That's a beautiful example. Thank you for sharing that. It doesn't have to be new people. It can be people you know but haven't had closer contact with. And what you just mentioned is actually another one of those components that make a friendship more likely. Besides physical proximity, which helps, it's also important to be in a similar life stage. So in your example, she went from being in a relationship to being widowed. And because she herself was now alone without a partner, she opened up her awareness to other women in her situation. So all of a sudden, she was no longer focusing on people who were still in a relationship or married, but putting her attention to people who were also widowed or whatever, or separated. And that is a beautiful example. If my current life situation is changing, it's quite natural that with that life change, sometimes friendships also change with it. And if I lose contact with some friends, because another classic example, two really close friends, one goes off and has a major career and the other one gets married and has children. They were maybe best buddies, but their life is going in such opposite direction that they may find they have very little in common anymore. So it's quite natural in those transitions that it may be required to find new friends again. And there's an interesting study that I came across, that a study basically found every 7 years, 50% of my social network turns around 100%.
Wow.
Every 7 years, because of changing life circumstances, you move job, you move city. And I've moved quite a bit. I've lived in other countries. I've had different jobs in different cities. And from all the people that I would have considered my friends when I lived there, once I left the city or left the job, there were literally 1 or 2 left, maybe, maximum. The rest just dissipated. And I think it's important to bear in mind that this is actually something that's normal. And Nina, we were talking about that you are in the lucky position to have a couple of good friends for decades.
Yeah.
Right? That can also be the case, but it's not something we should take for granted. That's not the norm. It's more normal for there to be more fluctuation. And at the same time, I think knowing this can be helpful to take pressure off myself. I'm not a loser and incapable of having friends. I've just maybe moved around a lot, and that makes it more difficult to maintain friendships. So don't beat yourself up over it, but do leave the comfort zone and make that first step.
Absolutely. I will come to you, Thomas, but I just wanted to pick up on that last thing. I've actually experienced both. I've moved cities quite a lot as well, so I also experienced these fading friendships. And I think what is also helpful is to ask yourself, when you have a solid base of friends, for me, it's like it's also it's a promise. I'm here for you. I do want to spend time with you. I want to listen to you when you're feeling low. And I've had moments in my life where I've decided that I don't have the capacity for a new friend, because if I would decide to have that new friendship, there is a promise coming with it, and maybe I cannot keep that promise. And I think that's also something that is completely fair and fine, and nobody should judge him or herself for it if you decide, I do not want to take on this friendship.
Absolutely, yeah. And sorry, Thomas, just 1 second. You mentioned a really important thing, Nina. You called it a promise, and it's basically friendships require time, energy, and attention. Friendships don't, when they start off, sometimes they can develop quite naturally, just like in a relationship. You fall in love, it all happens very easily on its own. But after a certain point, it requires effort, input, time, attention. And that's something to bear in mind. And also do maybe a little check-in with myself. What am I actually doing towards nurturing that friendship? If I have a garden and I like beautiful flowers, it's not enough to plant the seed, but I need to water it, and I need to, get rid of other plants that are taking away nutrients. What am I doing to really nurture and look after the friendships that I do have?
Absolutely. Now, Thomas, go ahead. Sorry for keeping you waiting for so long.
No worries, no worries. I will wait anyway. Yeah, we all have those examples also from television shows, maybe, like if we see the television show Friends and we see them sitting together in the coffee downstairs every day, and I just got reminded, well, do I really have this social battery that I can charge this way, that I have the energy to go somewhere every day to meet my friends? I think that would be too much for me. But sometimes we have this. And yeah, then it's tough. I can imagine that it's tough to follow up. And that comes to the question here in the chat. It's about finding a balance on the one side to not bore or to overwhelm others with the stories that I tell about myself. Is there a way, or do you have a strategy, or is this something maybe also for an EAP counseling consultation, how to find a balance between opening myself to others and not overwhelming or boring them?
Interesting question. So is that just a feeling that I have myself, that they may be overwhelmed, or have they said that they find it a little bit too much? You know what? Quite simply, just ask them. Just ask them. I really enjoy spending time with you, and when I see you, I just keep on blabbing. I feel like I have so many things I want to tell you, but sometimes I'm a little concerned that it's too much for you. I just wanted a little check-in. Do you find it a bit too much sometimes? Just literally ask them if that is, maybe it's just your own perception, and they will go, oh, absolutely not. I really enjoy listening to your stories.
And I really like this because when you said that right now, that's something that I would never do or have done before. But when you say that, and I think about how would I feel if somebody tells me, hey, I'm really happy to spend time with you. You feel wertgeschätzt. You feel
appreciated.
Appreciated. Yeah, that's great. And there's also another question, but maybe Nina, if it's
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I have one more question before I leave again. And the question is, if you have any advice, and it's also regarding this topic right now, do you have any advice to get into deeper friendships and not only have superficial ones? I think that's really interesting.
Good question. And, superficial friendships can be a lot easier to maintain, where it's all, stay on the surface, but don't share anything that's really personal. Again, this is an area for a little experimentation and leaving the comfort zone by gradually and carefully opening yourself up first. share something a little personal, not too much, just a little personal. How, I don't know, a situation happened in work and how that made you feel, and see if the other person is willing to respond to your emotional opening. You may find that they open up, and that way you already have entered a deeper level. If you feel like it makes them uncomfortable, then you can pull back without any harm. That would be something that I would try out in that case. Be the first one to take that really emotional exposure.
I think that's really good advice. Gradually, check out how much the other person is able to carry.
Yeah.
I have a little story regarding that as well. I had a little, I think friendship in the beginning is a little bit like dating. You know, you meet, you spend time together, you get to know each other, and then you kind of test how you get along with that person. And I actually had a date with my neighbor, a date, a female neighbor, so a friendship date. And we went for a walk, which I think is nice because you can move and you can, you know, you're not like sitting in a chair and completely focused on the other person. It's more, you can look at things. And anyways, and she was actually telling me a lot of personal things. I'm a very open person, but I was a little irritated. And then I felt like I kind of listened to myself and I was like, do I actually like that or is it too much? And I couldn't really decide. Okay. And then I went back home and I let it sink in a little bit. Yeah. And now I decided I like it. She just told me what was crossing her mind. But you always have this opportunity to double check with yourself. Yeah, do I want that? Do I like that?
Yeah, this is a really good example. Thank you, Nina. It is definitely like dating. It's about trying out. It's spending time together. It's like a little experiment and see, are we on the same wavelength? Does that match? Do we think in similar ways? And if we find out in that dating process that it doesn't match, which may very well be, then it's also okay to not continue on that discovery road. Maybe that person is not suitable. So it's about trying out things, leaving that comfort zone, taking a calculated risk that maybe the other person will find it a little bit weird that you talk to them. But I'm a big fan of trying things out. And I know from my own experience and I know from other people that usually when we do leave that comfort zone and we are courageous and just talk to someone and ask them, more often than not, the response will be positive. If I never take that first step, I will never find out. So invitation at the side, try and take that first step. Go be a little bit, take a calculated risk, even if the other person may find you weird or too much. Go out, try it out, do a little experiment, and then see if that works. And I reckon that more often than not, you'll be surprised at the positive effect.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and you will feel it, I think, in the way the person responds, if the person pulls back a little bit, or if the person also tries to share more. And then you can, I think for me, when a person shares personal stuff, it's like a little present that you receive. It's even more appreciated when you see that this person is not an oversharer. Oversharer in general, but when the person is rather a little bit careful, and then you realize, okay, that's a process of opening up that is going on there, and I think that's really beautiful.
A huge sign of trust if somebody opens up to you. Of course, there's some people who tell almost anybody anything, but there are exceptions. But if you, like you said, if there's somebody who opens up to you more than they open up to others, it's a huge sign of trust. And that is like a gift, yeah, because it's not something that is to be expected.
And would you say that it's possible to be friends between men and women? What's your opinion on that?
I have no idea if there's any scientific research on that. Maybe there is. I'm not aware of it. That's a good question. I know of platonic friendships between men and women. I do believe it can be possible, but maybe it's a little more complicated. It depends on a lot of factors. But per se, I know of, sorry?
A bit more risk is included.
A bit more risk is included. And if you're in a relationship, that obviously also plays a role. But generally, I know of friendships between men and women that are really good friendships and they're purely platonic. So I do believe it's possible, but maybe it can be a little bit more complicated depending on your life circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, also when we consider what you mentioned earlier, that women tend to go into a very deep emotional connection, whereas men rather spend fun times together. That can also already, in the building, can be a conflict, can't it?
Can be a mismatch. Again, I said earlier there were big drawers to be opened up. There are men who are very good at doing emotional deep dives, sometimes so emotionally deep where as a woman I think, wow, I didn't expect that. So, there's a lot of individuality here and many scenarios are possible.
Mm-hmm.
So in the end, the question is, and that's another component, we were talking about physical proximity, we were talking about being in a similar life stage. And the third component is, what's the vibe between us? Is there a positive vibe? And before we went live, we were talking about how we sometimes have friends or contact with people that are completely outside our usually type of people that we spend time with. And as you were telling me that story about your neighbor, I remembered a few years ago, I went on a long distance hike where I was hiking for several weeks. And I actually did that on my own, quite deliberately on my own, because I knew I would meet people along the way, and it didn't last long. On the second day, I met a 60-year-old Austrian pensioner. What do I have to do with a 60-year-old Austrian pensioner? Nothing in common. Yeah. But we started, as we were hiking, we're doing basically some of the sections together, and we realized that we both love traveling, and we were talking about our travels, and we both enjoyed hiking, and there was such a positive vibe between us, even though job-wise, location-wise, we had nothing in common, but we were, during that time, we had the same vibe because of shared interest.
Mm-hmm. And are you still in touch with that person?
Occasionally, but now it's definitely superficial. At the time, we had really great discussions, but that's fine. That's totally fine. That sometimes if we're in a particular life stage, sometimes there's people that accompany us just in that particular phase of your life, and that's okay.
Yeah. It's actually a beautiful thing, isn't it? Especially when you don't expect it to happen.
Yeah, when you don't expect it, and you can enjoy it and see it as a gift. And this is what I meant earlier about opening up and doing something out of the ordinary. Maybe talk to people you wouldn't normally talk to. Just give it a shot and see what happens. Maybe you discover someone who has a shared interest and you would have never ever thought about talking to the person otherwise.
Yeah. We talked now a lot about finding new friends, which I think is really relevant, especially when you cross a certain age, as we already discussed as well. But what I also think is a really important aspect of friendship is maintaining it, especially when times get rough. Because probably all of us know friendships are not linear. Sometimes you have conflict, sometimes there are breakups even. How would you put that into perspective? What's your opinion on that, on this fluctuation of friendship?
Well, first of all, it is important to bear in mind that friendships they're like a living system. Like a relationship with my partner. It's not like I have a partner and then I don't have to do anything and we're happy ever after. You know, that's what we wish, but it can be a lot of hard work to maintain a relationship. We know that. And with friends, it's on a different level, but it also requires effort and attention from both sides, right? So if you, Nina, if you're willing to invest into an existing friendship, but the other person isn't, you know, there's a mismatch here that you on your own can't gap. Of course, you can talk about it, you can address it, but it takes two to tango. That's important to bear in mind. And as I said earlier, as we grow and develop in our lives, you know, we change jobs, we get older, maybe as an older woman you enter menopause, or you have children, whatever your life change may be. As I said earlier, it's quite natural that some of your friends will quite naturally fluctuate, and to accept this as also something normal, that there is fluctuation in friendships. Not every friendship is there to last forever, and I think we're well advised to not have that expectation. You know, I can have a really good friend and enjoy that friendship, but not expect that that friend should be there forever and always without me having to do anything for it. So friendships require care from both sides.
Yeah, like a little plant that needs water.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like, I like that example in the garden. If I don't water it, if I don't do anything, and I want to have beautiful flowers, but I'm not bothered putting in effort, well, maybe you're lucky and you have a really tough, beautiful plant out there that forgives all that. But chances are the plant's gonna wither. And friendships are also living systems that require water and sunlight and nutrients.
Absolutely. Do you have some tips how to, when I encounter a friendship that is really important and valuable for me, and I really want to maintain that friendship, and I want to do everything in my power to keep the relationship strong, what would your tips be on that? What can I do to keep the relationship strong? Yes, to maintain the friendship. When I want to ensure that over time that is going to be a stable relationship that I'm not losing.
Yeah. Well, I think one aspect we touched on earlier is to also talk about the friendship with the friend, you know, to not just expect things to work out, but if I feel, for example, that a good friend of mine feels like is withdrawing a little bit, you know, I think that's something we can a lot of us can identify with, at least I can, where there were friends that I had regular contact with, and just over time, it felt like we were gradually growing apart. And that's kind of the critical point where I either let it keep growing apart, or I say, okay, now hold on a minute. I really appreciate and cherish this friendship. I don't want to let it just dissipate. In that case, I would really recommend that you talk to your friend about this and just state your observation and how it makes you feel. Like, for example, Nina, both our lives seem so incredibly busy. It feels like I haven't seen you in ages. I miss us. I miss our friendship. I miss our giggling evenings together. I would really love if we could catch up in the next month or so. What do you reckon? So talk about it, and that's really important, not in an accusatory or kind of way, or as an expectation, you should be calling me back first. That's probably not going to work very well, but just share your observation. I've noticed we seem to be seeing each other less, and I miss that. I miss our times together. What do you reckon? Do you want to do something that do you also feel like we should be making an effort to see each other more often? And that way it's eye to eye. And if the other person doesn't want to, then that's something we will have to, obviously, you know, nothing we can force. But again, taking that first step and putting it on the agenda and saying, how it makes you feel and what you're missing and what you would like, without having it as an expectation, but just expressing it as a wish. And then leave it up to the other person if they want to respond to it, or how they want to respond to it.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting what you said earlier, to be very upfront with doubts you might have as a person regarding your friendship. Would you also recommend, when we look at early phases of friendship where I do not know the person completely deeply, it's in the beginning, I kind of know something, but not everything. Would you recommend also being upfront, or when I'm unsure? I mean, when I'm not sure how this person prefers things, likes things, would you recommend to be very open with asking them? Well,
just like the example I gave with an existing friend, similarly, I can express, listen, we've gone for a run together for the last couple of times. I have to say, I really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun going for a run with you. Just wanted a little check-in. Are you fine with doing this more often? Because I'd be really interested. Just express what's on your mind without having an expectation of the other person. That's really important. The other person should never feel like, oh, Nina now expects me to go for a run with her every week. Oh no, I don't want that. But expressing it like an invitation, like I'd be on for it. How about you? And see how the other person responds. Do they go, yeah, sure? Do they go, that could be a little tricky. No, it was fine a couple of times, but I'm really busy with work and all that. If you hear that, then it may be an indication they're not that interested. But rather than guessing, more asking and having more clarity earlier on. Because one thing is pretty much often the case, that when we think we know what the other person is thinking, we're usually terribly wrong.
Yeah.
So let's not guess what other people are thinking. Let's ask them more what they're thinking.
Yeah.
Rather than doing wild guesses that are usually not correct.
I think quite many of us might think that is also a bit moving out of your comfort zone, because I was just thinking, did I ever phrase a question like that? And I'm not sure I actually did. But then I also thought about, how would I feel if I received that question? And just as Thomas said, it's something nice, right? It's appreciation. And if you don't want to take the invitation to a friendship, you're not forced to. So I think it wouldn't be nothing to be ashamed about when the response is not as you would have hoped. Then it's just something to accept, maybe.
Again, it's a two-way thing, and if two people don't feel the same way about each other, then it's free choice. And rather than wondering, second guessing, showing that appreciation. I really enjoy spending time with you. It's a lot of fun. I would love if we could, and then ask the other person their opinion, and maybe they'll tell you the truth, maybe they won't, but you can at least their reaction will probably give you some sort of indication into whether it's a hey, yeah, or we'll see, you're really busy these days. At least you can have more clarity earlier on.
Yeah, interesting.
You see, it's great if things develop naturally, wonderful, if they do develop naturally. But I think the older we get, it's maybe worth a shot, maybe worth a try, being more proactive. In communicating these things. If it works naturally, great. If it doesn't work naturally, then it's worth. I always say it's give it a shot, give it a try. Unless you've tried, you can't say whether it works or not.
Yeah. We have one last question in the chat. I just looked at the time, and actually we are almost at the end. So I just want to include this last question from the chat. Here's a person asking for friendships that change when people are getting married and communication is not as frequent as it used to be. And the person would like to know if that's normal. What would you think?
That's what we talked about earlier. In fact, that can be quite normal. Two completely different life stages. One is getting married, maybe they're buying a house, maybe they're thinking about having children. The other person is not in a relationship. They spend their time and attention now on different topics. So it can quite naturally happen that there's less contact. And again, this is a beautiful example of, do I just let that drift apart? Or do I say that to my friend who got married and say, like the example I gave earlier, it feels like, I really appreciate the time you have together, but it just feels like since you got married, it feels like we've had less time, which of course makes sense. You're now in a marriage and you occupied with other things. I really care about you, and I just wanted to let you know that I miss spending the time with you, and I just wanted to bring it up and see, how do you feel about this? Yeah. Again, showing your appreciation for the friendship, saying, I miss the time that we had. How do you feel about this? Yeah. And then leave the choice up to the other person. Maybe I'll say, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm sorry, I got so tangled up in my marriage and looking for a house. I completely forgot about our friendship, Yeah, let's change that. That may be a reaction, or they may say, things are so different now and we're trying for a baby and all the new neighbors. At least you have more clarity than at that point. Yeah, true. Very nice. It's really important to just say, how does it make me feel? We see each other so much less. I'm a little sad about this. I miss us. I miss our friendship. I miss our pizza nights. I miss that. How do you feel about this? So there's no accusation. There's no, you have to do this or expected to do this. It's, I enjoy the time we have. I miss the time we've had. How do you feel? Do you reckon, is there a chance we could see each other more often? Yeah. And then take it from there. And maybe it's also important to not take it personal. I think it can be hurtful for the person that feels like not seen anymore or not taken care of in the friendship. And sometimes when life situations change, it's not about me as a person that doesn't find space in the life of the other person anymore. It's just the circumstances. Yeah. I think that's a really important point you just made, Nina. I think we tend to very quickly take it personally, that it has something to do with me. I'm not likable anymore. I'm boring. And to remind ourselves that all of our lives, probably most of our lives, are incredibly busy and full. And we may have the best of intentions to maintain friendships, but it just gets lost in everyday life. So it's more often the reason being that our lives are very full and there's not enough time. It's more often the reason for friendships drifting apart than actual conflicts. Being the reason. Absolutely. With that said, time's almost up. What a shame. I think we could have talked for hours about this wonderful topic, at least from my perspective. Thank you, everyone, for attending today and for including your questions and for sharing your feelings. And if there's anything that we could not cover today, again, please take the invitation to contact your employee assistance program, and we'll be happy to discuss your particular case with you. And Dorothea, I just want to say thank you for this great conversation. It was a lot of fun talking to you today. Same here. Thank you very much, Nina. Enjoyed it too. Thanks for having me. And everyone else, Thomas is back as well. Thomas wants to say goodbye as well, I think.
Goodbye. Thank you for joining.
Parting words.
Thank you for joining, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the week.